For decades, Dr. Phil has witnessed every kind of human drama unfold on his stage. Betrayals, addictions, family feuds. He's seen it all with the steady composure of a man who's dedicated his life to helping others navigate their darkest moments. But on this particular afternoon, something happened that no one in that studio, not the crew, not the audience, not even Dr. Phil himself, was prepared for. The cameras captured the exact moment when Dr. Phil McGraw, the man known for his unwavering professional control, broke down completely. It started like any other taping. The audience filed into the studio, taking their seats under the familiar blue backdrop and bright stage lights. Production assistants checked microphones, cameras rolled into position, and Dr. Phil's signature intro music filled the space. "Today's guest is Margaret," Dr. Phil announced, gesturing toward a woman in her early 70s sitting on the stage's iconic beige couch. Her hands trembled slightly as she clutched a worn photograph. "Margaret has spent the last 40 years searching for something that was taken from her in the most devastating way possible." Margaret looked directly into the camera, her eyes already glistening with unshed tears. "I lost my brothers in a fire," she began, her voice barely above a whisper. "We were in foster care. The house burned down. I was told they didn't make it out. But what Margaret didn't know, what no one in that studio knew yet, was that everything she'd been told for 4 decades was a lie. The fire had indeed happened on a cold February night in 1984. Margaret, then 12 years old, had been separated from her 2 younger brothers, David, age 8, and Michael, age 6, just months earlier when their mother's drug addiction had spiraled out of control. The state had placed them in different foster homes across Oregon. When the fire broke out at David and Michael's foster home, the chaos was overwhelming. Emergency responders rushed to the scene. In the confusion, the foster care system made a catastrophic error. They marked the 2 boys as deceased in their records, even though they'd actually been pulled from the building alive and placed in emergency care. Margaret, in her own foster home 30 miles away, was simply told her brothers were gone. No funeral. No bodies. No closure. Just the devastating finality of losing the only family she had left. For 40 years, Margaret carried that grief like a stone in her chest. She went on to build a life, married, had children, became a grandmother. But the loss never left her. Every birthday, every holiday, every milestone was shadowed by the absence of David and Michael. She kept that worn photograph, the only image she had of her brothers, in her wallet for 4 decades. 3 months before this taping, Margaret had been contacted by a genealogy company. She'd submitted her DNA years earlier, hoping against hope that somehow, somewhere, there might be family she didn't know about. The emails she received changed everything. "We've found 2 DNA matches that indicate sibling relationships." Dr. Phil leaned forward on stage, his elbows on his knees, listening with the intensity that's made him one of the most trusted figures in American households. "Margaret, when you got that email, what went through your mind?" "I thought it was a mistake," Margaret said, her voice cracking. "I thought it was some kind of cruel joke. My brothers died 40 years ago. How could they be alive?" Dr. Phil paused. The studio went completely silent. He stood up from his chair and walked to the edge of the stage, looking directly at the audience. This wasn't scripted. The producers in the control room exchanged confused glances. Dr. Phil never broke the 4th wall like this. "I want everyone here to understand something," Dr. Phil said, his voice taking on a gravity that commanded absolute attention. "What we're about to do here today isn't just television. This is someone's entire life changing in real time. This is 40 years of grief, 40 years of loss, 40 years of questions finally getting answered." He turned back to Margaret. "Before we go any further, I need to prepare you for something. Because what I'm about to tell you is going to shake the foundation of everything you've believed for most of your life." Margaret's hands gripped the photograph tighter. Are they really alive?" Dr. Phil pulled a white envelope from his jacket pocket. The camera zoomed in on it. A simple, unmarked envelope that contained the power to rewrite history. Margaret, the fire in 1984 was real. The chaos was real. But the report that your brothers died. Dr. Phil's voice softened. That was a mistake. A terrible, devastating bureaucratic mistake. Subscribe and leave a comment, because the most powerful part of this story is still ahead. Margaret's breath caught. What are you saying? I'm saying that David and Michael survived that fire. They were pulled out alive. But in the chaos, someone in the system marked them as deceased in the records. They were immediately placed in new foster homes, and because they were told you had died in a different placement, they spent 40 years believing they'd lost you too. The audience gasped collectively. Several people in the front row were already crying. They're alive? Margaret's voice was barely audible. They're not just alive, Margaret. Dr. Phil held up the envelope. They're here. The studio erupted in shocked reactions, but Dr. Phil raised his hand for silence. Before we bring them out, I need you to understand something else. David and Michael spent 40 years searching for you too. They never believed the story about your death. David hired private investigators, spent thousands of dollars trying to find any trace of you. Michael joined every online foster care reunion group, posted in every forum, hoping someone would recognize your name. Margaret was openly sobbing now. They looked for me? For 4 decades, Margaret. They never stopped. Dr. Phil turned to the camera operator. Stop the tape for a second. He looked at his producers in the wings. Give us a minute here. This isn't about the show right now. He sat down next to Margaret, took her hand, and spoke in a voice so quiet the microphones barely picked it up. I've done this for a long time, Margaret. I've reunited a lot of families. But I need you to know. This moment you're about to have, this is going to redefine everything. 40 years of grief is about to transform into something else entirely. Are you ready? Margaret nodded, unable to speak. Off camera, Dr. Phil made a choice no producer expected. He walked backstage himself, breaking every protocol in television production. The audience could hear his voice through the studio speakers. Gentlemen, your sister is ready to meet you. The stage door opened. 2 men walked out. One in his early 50s, the other in his late 40s. Both had the same eyes as Margaret. Both were already crying. But what happened next is something no one in the room, or watching at home, saw coming. David, the older brother, stopped 3 feet from the couch. He pulled out a photograph from his own wallet, the exact same worn photograph Margaret was holding. They'd both kept the same image for 40 years. Maggie? His voice broke on her childhood nickname. David? She stood, her legs barely supporting her. Michael, the younger brother, couldn't hold back anymore. He crossed the stage in 3 strides and wrapped his arms around Margaret. David joined a second later. The 3 siblings collapsed together, 40 years of separation dissolving in an embrace that shook all 3 of them with sobs. And then Dr. Phil did something he hasn't done in 17 years of television. He turned away from the camera, his hand covering his mouth, tears streaming down his face. The man who'd counseled presidents, confronted criminals, and mediated the most explosive family conflicts on national television was completely undone by the raw humanity of this moment. The audience was on their feet, crying, applauding through their tears. The camera operators were wiping their eyes. Even the sound technician in the booth was openly weeping. Dr. Phil composed himself enough to speak. In all my years of doing this, he said, his voice thick with emotion, I have never, and I mean never, witnessed anything like this. He approached the 3 siblings, still locked in their embrace, and placed his hands on their shoulders. David, Michael, Margaret, what was stolen from you can never be given back. Those 40 years are gone. But what you have right now, in this moment, is a chance to rewrite every day going forward. David pulled back slightly, looking at Dr. Phil with red-rimmed eyes. We thought we were alone. You were never alone, Dr. Phil said firmly. You were separated, but you were never alone. Every single day for 40 years, each of you was thinking about the others. That connection never broke. It was just interrupted. Michael finally spoke, his voice hoarse. What do we do now? Dr. Phil made a decision that would affect not just this family, but thousands of others in similar situations. Here's what we're going to do, Dr. Phil said, turning to address both the siblings and the camera. My team has already arranged for family counseling services specialized in reunification trauma. You three have a lot of healing to do, a lot of time to catch up on. But you're not doing this alone. He pulled out 3 business cards, not his own, but cards for Dr. Lisa Kaplan, a specialist in separated family trauma who'd been waiting backstage. Dr. Kaplan has agreed to work with your family for the next year, completely covered. No cost to you. Because this isn't just about today. This is about rebuilding what was taken from you. Margaret looked at the cards, then at her brothers, then back at Dr. Phil. Why are you doing this? Dr. Phil's voice was gentle but firm. Because I can. Because you deserve it. And because if I can use this platform to help even one more family find each other, then every single episode, every single tear, every single hard conversation we've ever had on this stage has been worth it. The envelope Dr. Phil had been holding throughout all of this sat on the coffee table between them, the DNA results that had confirmed what the siblings' hearts had always known. Before we finish today, Dr. Phil said, picking up the envelope, I want you 3 to understand what this represents. He held it up to the camera. This isn't just paper and science. This is proof that the truth always finds a way to surface. 40 years of bureaucratic failure, 40 years of grief, 40 years of separation, and still, the truth came out. He handed the envelope to Margaret. Keep this. Not because you need proof, you'll feel the proof every time you hug your brothers from now on. But because it's a symbol. It's a reminder that even when systems fail, even when the world seems determined to keep families apart, love finds a way. David put his arm around Margaret's shoulders. We're really together? You're really together. Dr. Phil confirmed. Michael looked at the photograph they'd all kept. 40 years, and we all held on to the same picture. That tells you everything you need to know, Dr. Phil said. You 3 never gave up on each other. Not for one single day. Share and subscribe. Make sure this story is never forgotten. As the cameras prepared to stop rolling, Dr. Phil did one final thing that would become legendary in television history. He invited the entire audience to come down to the stage. Every person here today just witnessed something sacred. He announced, these 3 people just got their family back after 4 decades. If you want to share in this moment, come down here. Let them know they're not alone anymore. The audience flooded the stage. Strangers hugged the 3 siblings. Older women who'd lost their own families cried with Margaret. Young men who'd been in foster care themselves shook David and Michael's hands. The production schedule was abandoned. No one cared about time anymore. Dr. Phil stood at the edge of the stage, watching the human connection unfold, wiping tears from his eyes without shame. Later he would tell his team, this is why we do what we do. Not for the ratings, not for the attention, but for moments like this. When we can use this platform to bring light into someone's darkest chapter, everything else is just noise. The impact of this episode rippled far beyond that studio. Within 48 hours, the DNA testing company that had connected the siblings saw a 300% increase in registrations from people hoping to find lost family members. Foster care reform organizations across the country used the episode as evidence for the need to overhaul record-keeping systems. Most importantly, 17 other sibling groups came forward with similar stories, separated by the same bureaucratic failures, each believing the others were dead. Dr. Phil's team connected each of them with reunion services. Margaret, David, and Michael spent their first Christmas together in 41 years surrounded by their combined families. Margaret's children and grandchildren finally meeting the uncles they never knew existed. The photograph they'd all kept. They had it restored and enlarged, hanging now in each of their homes as a reminder that faith, even in the darkest times, is never wasted. Dr. Phil carries something from that day with him still. In his office, framed on the wall behind his desk, is a simple thank you card from Margaret. It reads, "You gave me back my brothers. You gave my children their uncles. You gave my grandchildren their family history. But most of all, you reminded me that miracles are real. Thank you for never giving up on people." When asked about that day, Dr. Phil's response is always the same. "I didn't give them anything. They found each other. I just had the honor of being there when it happened. That's not my miracle, it's theirs. I was just lucky enough to witness it." The episode became the highest rated in the show's history, but Dr. Phil has never watched it back. "I don't need to," he says. "I was there. I felt it. That moment is burned into my memory forever, not as television, but as a reminder of why human connection is the most powerful force on Earth." The white envelope still exists, too. Margaret keeps it in a safety deposit box alongside the restored photograph as a reminder that truth always surfaces. As for David and Michael, they've made it their mission to help other separated siblings find each other. They've funded a nonprofit that assists with DNA testing for foster care alumni and lobbies for better record-keeping in child welfare systems. "We lost 40 years," David says. "We can't get those back. But we can make sure other families don't have to lose theirs." And that mission, that transformation of pain into purpose, is exactly what Dr. Phil had hoped for when he first held that envelope and saw the power it contained. Not just to reunite one family, but to change the system that had broken them apart in the first place. This is the story that broke Dr. Phil. This is the episode he calls his most important. Not because of the tears, not because of the drama, but because it proved that even in a world that often seems designed to keep us apart, the bonds of family, the deep, unbreakable connections that define who we are, will always find a way to bring us home.